Roach of the Department of Communication, and on behalf of the Honorable Prime Minister of St. Martin, Silveria Jacobs, I welcome you today, Thursday, September 15th, 2022, to this press conference on an update regarding Tropical Storm Fiona. I would now like to invite the Honorable Prime Minister, Silveria Jacobs, to provide you with her opening remarks. Prime Minister Jacobs, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Relaika. As we all know, thank you for joining me also, my panel from the Emergency Operations Center. This afternoon, we held our meeting of the Emergency Operations Center in preparation for the coming storm. We have been continually updated by the Meteorological Department under the Ministry of TEAT. And of course, once that go-ahead is given, we are called together to prepare. So in that meeting this afternoon, all 10 ESF functions coordinators gave their updates and report, and I would like to give some updates to the general public as to the way forward in preparation for Tropical Storm Fiona. Of course, we will have the Meteorological Department head, Mr. Isaac, give the professional breakdown, but based on our meeting held this afternoon, a couple of decisions were made. First of all, being that the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport was advised by the EOC that it would be best to have schools closed tomorrow. So that has been conveyed to the school boards via letter and is being conveyed via this announcement in the press conference today. So as per the decision of the Minister under the advice received by the EOC, the schools will be closed as of tomorrow. Also, in terms of the preparations that have been made, the discussion on whether business should be closed or not is still going to be discussed and decided upon early in the morning after we get the final updates. It is expected, and Mr. Isaac will corroborate that the storm will be having some impact on the country by Friday afternoon. As such, the decision as to how bad that may be or not would be after we get the latest updates at 5 in the morning, and announcements will be made tomorrow morning again at 9 a.m. The Department of Romy also updated on their preparedness in terms of preparing for the excessive rainfall that we may experience, as well as clearing of trenches and deciding also in the low-lying areas that we know are prone to flooding, that in collaboration with the police, that they would be then at a certain time blocked from traffic. So people are asked to take into consideration that barricades are being placed there for your protection and to honor those, of course, taking into consideration all of the announcements that would come officially from government, the chief of police or the acting chief of police in this case today, and of course, if it gets to that, the EOC. So low-lying areas like the Cul-de-Sac Basin, Phillipsburg and the surrounding Simpson Bay and Mullet Bay are all asked, as per usual, to be cautious of the results of excessive rainfall. From the Ministry of VSA, Social Development and Labor, under the Ministry of Social Affairs, that ESF 7, which is charged with shelters, the hurricane shelter at John Larmany Center will be opened. The time, etc., will be announced also tomorrow morning. But of course, anyone needing to make use of said shelter would, of course, have to walk with their own supplies, such as water, snacks, and other necessities like medication. Some of the other government-owned companies have already made their announcements. The Princess Juliana International Airport, in terms of its opening and closing hours, as well as others. I believe Telem has also put out theirs. So we ask the public to take note of those public announcements. But as government of St. Martin, we will be making the announcements as to government's closures and or other business closures at 9 a.m. tomorrow. With that being said, that would conclude the opening remarks. And I would like then to pass the floor, with your permission, Relaika, to Mr. Isaac of the Department of Meteorological, the Meteorological Department of St. Martin. Sorry, Mr. Isaac.
Thank you, PM. Thank you, all those today. Thank you, PM, for the introductions, and thanks to all here today. As we know, we have been looking at an area of disturbed weather for the past week or so between the Atlantic and the Caribbean. We're in the heart of the hurricane season, and we know that is the time that we have those systems coming off the coast of Africa. Yesterday, that system was upgraded to a tropical depression, and when it was upgraded to a tropical depression, based on the probabilities for St. Martin, last night we put in a tropical storm watch, although it was still a depression, but because of the forecast of it being a storm, we went for tropical storm watch, and this morning we upgraded to a tropical storm warning. Most persons would know what watches and warnings mean. So going forward, we now starting to look at the impacts and so on, and just to give the 5 p.m. position of tropical storm Fiona, it was located at 18.3 degrees north and 55.4 degrees west. That would be about 590 miles east-southeast of St. Martin. The maximum sustained winds from the previous forecast has gone up a bit, so it's now 60 miles per hour with higher gusts. The present movement is west at 14 miles per hour, and the minimum central pressure is 1,002 millibars. Based on the forecast track, we expect that the center of Fiona would be at closest to St. Martin, and that would be to the south at 70 miles. So what we're saying is that the center of the system, based on the forecast we have presently, at the closest, it would be 75 miles to the south of St. Martin, and that would be sometimes on Saturday. However, we're talking about the center, and we have to make calculations and so on to see how far out it is. And based on the calculations and so on, we're seeing that we could start having impacts from the system as early as tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow evening. The impacts we're looking at rainfall. We're looking at rainfall amounts of 3 to 6 inches over the period. As I stated, tropical storm force winds about 60 miles per hour, and we have to be very careful with that because those things can go up, although it is in an area right now of wind shear, but that wind shear is not expected to last all the time. In fact, as the system comes closer to us, the area of St. Martin, there's less wind shear, so there's a possibility that the storm could even increase further. But even at 60 miles per hour, that is significant wind. And then you have gusts, so you would have to add gusts to that 60 miles per hour. The sea conditions, we expect seas to deteriorate as with most storms. The seas would start to deteriorate long before they experiencing the forces of the storm. So we expect by overnight into tomorrow that the seas will start to deteriorate. The situations with storms, as we all know, is that things can change quickly. So we just want to tell the general public that they really need to take this thing seriously and listen to all the updates coming from government officials and government entities. The meteorological department, we would issue main special reports every 6 hours in addition to our regular forecast. And in intermediate hours, that is 3 hours between the 6 hours, if there's any significant difference, we would also put out a statement so they could check on our website, the DCOM or government website. The information is available, and we will continue. Again, the maximum sustained winds are now up from 50 miles per hour from the last forecast to 60 miles per hour. The forecast path has not changed significantly, and we expect it at the closest to 75 miles from St. Martin with impacts late on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Isaac, and thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. I would now like to re-invite Prime Minister Jacobs. Prime Minister.
Thank you. Indeed, I did mention about the preparation between the Ministry of Romy and the police department with the barricades, but I forgot to mention that indeed the police is also being supported, or I should say the Marines are on standby to offer that support. There are quite a number on the island at the moment doing trainings and assisting the fire department or working together with the fire department and the police department. And so therefore that added value is there and has always been there for St. Martin to assist us, whether with human and or material to be able to assist before, during, and after the storm. As Mr. Isaac mentioned, the tropical storm Fiona has strengthened somewhat. And so while she still remains a tropical storm, I would like to just remind the people of St. Martin that we have been here before. We know what it takes. Preparation is key, and knowing that you have everything in place can bring a level of calm to you and the rest of the population. So look out for, of course, the most vulnerable in your families, ensuring especially that you have the hurricane preparedness kits ready and a supply of water and food that is necessary for the passage of such storms. I don't know if the disaster coordinator would say anything, but we are here to accept any questions from the media present. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. I would now like to open the question and answer session. Jacqueline Hoffman of the Daily Herald, you have the floor. Jacqueline, can you turn on your mic, please?
How is the information going to be transpired to other people that don't speak English?
In our communications plan, as you know, post-COVID, etc., there is a plan in place for the usual dissemination of information. And should it be necessary to go in the community, that will also be done. We've used in the past the car on this with the speaker on it to give information to the public. But at this time, we don't have any written and or written publications that go out in the various languages currently. But definitely, we will do our best. We have our translators on hand should that need arise.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I would now like to invite Andrew Dick of TV Carib. You have the floor.
Thank you, Roleka. Good afternoon to all present. Prime Minister, quite a number of persons were seen at shops, of course, doing the last-minute buying of items. Usually around this time, a lot of price gouging takes place. So your message to businesses out there doing that type of practice?
Well, throughout the year, the Ministry of TEAT continues to monitor these things. As you know, we did put in the basket of goods, increase the number of goods, staples and basics that the community would need, also including hygiene products. And so, of course, I encourage the business community to be good citizens and to be good partners with our citizens, with government, and ensure that they are not doing that. And the public has the opportunity via the websites that are government's website to report such incidences. So if this does take place, please, as public, ensure that you report this to the government of St. Martin and specifically to the Department of Economic Affairs. Valia Pontiflet is the head there. Also, I believe that it is good to mention that there is no need to go on a panic buying spree. I know that usually happens. And that's why every week in press briefing, we talk about being prepared. We always prepare for 2 to 3 days. And of course, thereafter, in this case, it's a tropical storm. We do assessments after, and the shops will reopen. So we ask the general public to be mindful of their fellow citizens and not go on a spree, buying down the shops. We've been here before, as I mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I would like to inform the members of the media we will have 3 rounds in total. So this is our second round. Jacqueline, you have the floor.
Prime Minister, the parliamentary meeting on GB tomorrow, will that continue?
We won't be able to say, especially expecting the conditions. GEB meeting was not scheduled to happen tomorrow, by the way. The meeting that was already postponed. So maybe the announcement wasn't made. I just realized what you said. The meeting that was supposed to be convened today was postponed for tomorrow. So we still have to double check with the weather, of course, depending on the weather, whether that will take place or not. The one with GEBE was postponed due to the fact that we did not receive all the information necessary for that meeting to proceed. But indeed, tomorrow's announcement at 9 a.m. will give a better indication as to which government and other businesses will be open during the afternoon or not.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Andrew, you have the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Isaac, maybe you can give us an indication of the similarities between what we are expecting to one we had already in the system that we had.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it is a very good question. Every system we deal with is unique in its nature, and as such, it would be difficult to really give a scenario of what. But as an individual and as advice, I would tend to go along the direction of Gonzalo, something that popped up suddenly and hit the island basically as a Category 1 or very strong tropical storm. So if persons want some sort of guidance, we would go along that sort of areas, the effects of Gonzalo. Like I said before, the mere fact that we're talking about the center of circulation being to the south of the island and we're going to be in the northern quadrant, that is something that we really need to take seriously, because if you're in the southern quadrant and the storm is going to pass close to you, then you don't have much difficulties. You could have an easy miss, but because the extent of the storm is about 140 miles and it's going to forecast to pass to our south, which means that we're going to be in the northern quadrant. That is a concern. The other concern is based on a number of models. There's a possibility that just after the center passes us, it could slow down. And if that happens with less wind shear in that area, the storm could actually intensify, and then we would be on the backside or the northeast quadrant of the system. And there's a possibility that we could be in for a long weekend in terms of we could still have impacts, rainfall, and so on going into Sunday. So as we said before, we just want the public to check the updates and so on. We will try as much as possible. Let's hope communication doesn't fail us, and we will keep the information. But what we always try and do is give a general synopsis. So if for some reason or the other communication fails, then persons would have a general idea of what to expect. And that is what they would get on our website, which is www.meteosxm.com. And we also have our Facebook page, which we update, Facebook and Twitter, which is Meteorological Department, St. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Isaac. We now move on to the third round. Jacqueline, you have the floor.
Mr. Gout, what kind of actions will the police be taking tomorrow?
First, above all, we increase the visibility, so you will see increased forces out there. And we have the areas where we expect that there's going to be flooding and other issues. We have special attention for them, like deploying our forces closer by to it to be faster on the scene. For instance, what the Prime Minister said about the barricades is so in place. In order for us to be closer by, we can put them, we can avoid, and many cars will go, get stranded, and then block the road. So to avoid that, because the water will rise, but it will go also. So it will be temporary. So the urge now is, the request is to ask the people then, as you see you're approaching that area, if you can have an alternative route, use that one. But if you're in that route and you see a barricade, it's for your own protection. Don't pass it. Because at that precise moment when the water is high, we cannot help you. When the water cools off, then we can come out to help you. So the barricades is one of the measurements. Putting people on different location is another one. And like that, we want to be close to where the hotspots is for this tropical storm. Also, we want to urge everybody to please stay indoor if you don't have to be out. Not because it's a storm, it's still dangerous.
Thank you, Chief of Police Hout. Andrew, you have the final question.
Yes, Mr. Holt. So just as a follow-up, any fines associated with violators? And also, Prime Minister, collaboration between the French side, is that also taking place as far as security is concerned? Yeah, that's it.
To answer the first part of your question, in circumstances like this, we go to zero tolerance. So violators have to pay or stay.
Thank you. As time still permits, we'll go ahead and
I have
do.
one.
Prime
You asked me
Minister?
a question too. Yes, indeed, there have been continued collaborations with our French counterparts. Each department has their own, let's say, communication. But just yesterday, in my monthly meeting with the prefect and his delegation, we confirmed our willingness to collaborate. In fact, enhance the collaboration that is already there. The meteorological department is in constant contact with other Caribbean meteorological services, also because of Anguilla being so close to us, as well as Meteo France, which serves French Saint Martin. We have had challenges in the past ensuring that the same messaging is going out. And so the aim is that we get towards a more synchronized messaging. But we must also understand the realities of the differences of the two parts. But we're working towards that. I've also been in contact today, and I need to get back in contact with the local counterpart, Mr. President Mussington. He did call, but I was in the middle of the EOC meeting at the time. So we are synchronizing as much as possible. Our police departments work together. Our fire departments work together. The health sector continues to work together. That has been enhanced since COVID. They're in weekly, bi-weekly contact with each other. So there are even agreements between hospitals, etc. And so with the support extra that we have on the Dutch side right now, with the military support, which we call zachte bijstand, we'll go through the process to do that officially, but at least that's been ascertained. We feel that we're well prepared for the coming of Tropical Storm Fiona, taking into consideration also the caution that our meteorological professionals are stating to the population to be prepared for an even longer haul based on the behavior that the storm is showing.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. As I mentioned, time does permit, so we'll have another round. Jacqueline, you have the floor.
The Dutch military will deliver assistance on request. When will be a moment that this assistance is requested?
The Dutch military here for exercises that they are scheduled from since last year. And with this moment of this storm approaching, we had been in contact this morning. There was meetings and strategies have been discussed. And like the Prime Minister said, the official requests have to be sent that at this moment haven't been sent yet.
Thank you, Police Chief Kaut. Prime Minister Jacobs?
Yes, so that will go, based on the fact that we're not in a state of emergency, that will go directly from the Minister of Justice via the usual channels in requesting the zachte bijstand. And that has been agreed, and so will be executed today in advance of the storm so that there can be the assistance as needed.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Andrew?
Prime Minister, just in case, I guess this is for the fire department also, just in case as far as ambulances are concerned. I know that we've been complaining, well, the citizens have been complaining about the shortage of ambulances. Has that been also looked at?
To answer your question, during the EOC meeting, the Ministry of VSA did inform us that they're busy looking into requesting assistance via WEAMS or via Accessible Ventures. So that is in the process because at the moment they only have 2 ambulances that are running. So they're busy with it at the moment.
Thank you, Fire Chief Richardson. Honorable Prime Minister, I would now like to invite Prime Minister Jacobs for her closing remarks.
Thank you, Relaika. Thank you to the media here present who asked those pertinent questions that the public may be asking. Thank you to my colleagues to the left and right. The EOC's meeting was a very fruitful one. I want to reiterate that all ESF functions, so coordinators have their teams, are prepared, are ready. We do have our limitations, of course, as was mentioned, with the number of ambulances. And so that's why the advice of Acting Chief Hout should be taken very, very seriously. And that person should be, once we've given the indication that you should be off the roads, that they should be adhered to very, very strictly. As he mentioned, we are then in zero tolerance mode. We will be giving an update tomorrow morning. Stay tuned to our broadcast that will be updated from the Meteorological Department of St. Martin, as was mentioned before, on www.stmartingov.org on r/hurricane. Thank you, Relika, for the up-to-the-minute preparation tips as well as updates, and meteosxm.com. These are the official sites of St. Martin. Yes, we do know that there are many people who follow bloggers and others, even official American sites that have big discussions. I'm not sure any of them studied meteorology. So I would really ask the people of St. Martin to stick with the meteorologists, stick with Meteo St. Martin in this case, who is advising government. They're normally very, very conservative. And I must say today, in just a few hours since our meeting, with the strengthening of the storm, I'm hearing a stricter advice from the meteorological department. So remain vigilant, be prepared. Panic does not help. Calm is always best in these situations. Treat each other with grace. And until the next broadcast tomorrow morning, be safe, St. Martin.
Honorable Prime Minister, EOC members, online viewers, and radio listeners, this brings us to the end of today's broadcast. For hurricane preparedness information and updates, tune in to stmartingov.org/hurricane. On behalf of the Department of Communication and the Government of St. Martin, I'm Rolika Roach, and wishing everyone a pleasant and safe evening ahead.